Salutations! With almost a decade's worth of gradually added mechanics, features, and options for new players to figure out in Final Fantasy XIV, it can all get a little overwhelming. Today, we're going to cover some of the most helpful ones. Up first, we have some low-hanging fruit: inventory expansion. Well, at least visually. The default setting has you clicking through 8 million little tabs, but if you go to character config, item settings, and inventory interface, selecting expanded will give you a large, square inventory with only 2 tabs, while open all will, well, it's kind of in the name. Critically, while you're here, I'd also uncheck this. By default, every piece of loot you get goes to the armory, this separate inventory meant only for gear. This is obnoxious even at level 1. By endgame, when you might have several gear sets for several different roles, it is unthinkable to waste precious armory space on random dungeon clutter. Have it all go to your inventory, where you can organize it and get rid of it much more easily. On the topic of gear, let's talk about spirit bonding. Beside your gear, there will always be 2 bars, one for durability and one for spirit binding. A spirit bond will naturally grow over time as you do content with the gear on, and when it's at 100%, you can extract materia from the piece of gear, giving you, well, materia and resetting the bar to 0%. These materia are important, especially at endgame, as slotting them into these little empty circles gives whatever extra stats the materia offers. For those who played WoW, they're pretty much like gems. However, the real reason I bring spirit binding up here is to share the Henry Ford method of mass production, or rather here, destruction. In your actions and traits page and under general, you'll see materia extraction has its own button. Clicking this will bring up a special menu which allows you to see the progress on any piece of gear and extract right there. Get comfortable with this system early and often, and it'll feel natural at endgame where it matters most. For the crafters out there, desynthesis and ethereal reduction have similar options, but crafting. Closing out our talk of gear, let's cover something special about that other bar, durability. Over time, gear wears down and eventually breaks, basically nulling out its stats until you get it repaired. NPCs sprinkled all over the world can do this for you, bringing the gear right back up to 100%, but there's a better way. When players repair gear, it doesn't simply bring the piece up to 100% durability. It adds another 100% durability on top of whatever the gear already had. For instance, if you had a player repair your gear at 85% max durability, it would give you 185%. This is a great way to make your gear last longer between repairs, but it requires you to either be or know a decent crafter. Real quick, I'd also like to draw attention to the slightly less useful but rather obscure sub-command box just below. If, for whatever reason, Square's default sorting of options when you right-click an item offends you, you can entirely rearrange those options here. Okay, we're done with all the inventory and gear garbage, now let's cover some fun stuff. 14 is a very social game, but it can sometimes be hard to make friends when you finish a fight or dungeon and everyone immediately leaps through the portal in a desperate effort to avoid your commendations. Well, we can't do anything about the commendations, but fortunately for your missed connections, there exists an obscure social setting forgotten by even many vets: the contact list. This menu will show you all the gamers you've recently done content with, and you can send friend requests to people who made a good impression, or blacklist the demons. You might not make frequent use of this while leveling, but at endgame where most content is done through the party finder, it is a great feature I use often. Speaking of leveling though, up next is some quality of life stuff for questing. It isn't exactly hidden, but here in your quest log, this map button is your best friend. It will immediately bring up exactly where you need to go for the next objective, a convenient time saver compared to fumbling manually around with the map. Clicking on the MSQ element serves a similar function, and both can help keep you focused while leveling. For another time saver, stop dragging in the required items for hand-in quests. You can simply right-click the box, which will bring up the exact item the NPC needs from you. Finally, let's cover some combat-related stuff. Changing jobs might seem a bit clunky when you're new, as you have to equip a weapon and then a job stone to properly change. Ideally, you'll save a new gear set for every job to make this process easier. From there, however, you can then drag these gear sets down to a hotbar, making them much easier to interact with on the fly. Some people put together fancy macros that hide these job swap icons in collapsible windows, but I've been lazy and only recently set this up myself, but it's very easy to do. Just set aside a few spare hotbars and make them shared, meaning they won't change depending on your current job. Line them up somewhere like so, drag your jobs down, and then disable them. The macros will then literally just re-enable them. I added, stole, these extra lines from a pinned comment on Ilya Dalmik's tutorial for this setup, which basically just means clicking on each hotbar closes any other ones, and they'll automatically close themselves after a few seconds, making it all feel properly UI-like. As a sub-suggestion here, it's worth noting that you can drag and drop almost every UI element in the game onto a hotbar. Want an easy way to access just your sound settings? Drag it down. The materia extraction we mentioned earlier? Drag it down. Housing, drag, you get it. Opening the Actions and Traits spellbook back up, let's talk about this option. Compact View is a great way to quickly understand what abilities an unfamiliar job actually has, as it will clean up the sprawl of the default setting and show you exactly what upgrades into what. Big recommend. Let's close out with some camera stuff. It is, after all, a third-person MMO, and so the camera is a beast you'll be wrestling with the entire time you play. This isn't really quality of life, but I strongly recommend you get comfortable with the max zoom level, as playing with a NASA telescope zoomed into the back of your character's neck will blind you to half the stuff happening in a fight. If, however, this feels off, I would like to introduce the up-down camera adjustment the game has. Either through this setting in the menu, or by holding Control and then the up and down arrow keys on your keyboard, you can actually adjust where the camera centers. Tinker with it and find something comfortable. I promise it will make a difference. I hope some of these options helped. No, don't you dare click away yet. We have to have the inaugural credit roll of our dear patrons, and I'd also like to make a quick advertisement for the Delinquent Art Club, our channel Discord that's been absolutely amazing so far, with tons of chatty people and some soon coming viewer content nights. Consider joining us with the link below and leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Otherwise, I will shatter your kneecaps and put you in the Lalafell chair.